guest, Christina Garnett, Principal Marketing Manager at HubSpot. Christina, it's wonderful to chat to you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to chat to you, Christina. And yeah, we're going to talk about something we have talked about previously. So I know that you're extremely knowledgeable on this subject. So I'm looking forward to picking your brains for see what social media strategies have in store for us in 2024. So, with that in mind, my opening question to you: what are those key factors that in the B2B social media landscape that businesses should be aware of in the forthcoming year?
You have to be aware of the fact that we are constantly determining which platforms we need to be on. We're seeing this with X and advertisers deciding whether or not they want to put paid there. We're seeing a lot of people shifting back to LinkedIn as like their safe platform of choice. But then we're also, video still wins. Like video is still capturing people's attention. And so, as always, you got to stay on your toes and you got to be really thoughtful about what do you engage with, what makes you stop scrolling, what is your audience like, doing A/B testing in your social, things like that.
So, just to let's touch on the X, or the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Um, there's obviously been a massive downswing in users, and part of that is going to be companies and that sort of thing. Do you think, is there a possibility that by the end of this year, X will have changed in such a way that will it have accrued a huge new audience, or do you think it will stay roughly the same? Do you think it will lose users? What do you suspect is going to happen with it? I mean, obviously, like, we can talk about this in wider terms, but then, talking about B2B users, what do you think?
I think that unless there is specific changes in leadership, you will see the continued downward spiral. And at the end of the day, you're walking into an economy where people are trying to make cuts, and paid is a really easy place to cut. And X or Twitter, whatever you want to call them, are making it really easy to cut that budget. And so it's not even just whether or not it's safe there, there's been reports of ad placement beside of anti-Semitic remarks or hate speech or other things. It's just really it's really difficult to make a case for why advertisers should be there when it's basically a minefield. And brand safety is huge. And so if I could spend my money there or I could spend my money somewhere else, brand safety is a huge contributor into how I make that decision and where I put my money. And so I think you'll see a lot of B2B places, a lot of B2B companies maybe experimenting with organic more on Twitter and X to see if it's viable there at all. But then again, like, organic slipping there too. You have to almost say something incendiary in order to get reach. And so I think you're going to see a lot more pivoting towards Threads. Threads is starting to add a lot more features. They've added the ability to do keyword search. So now you can do like very basic social listening on Threads, which is huge. And so I think you'll see a lot of people pivoting to Threads to see, does this scratch the itch organically? And if it scratches the itch organically, then we can look at paid. And then it being able to, they know what advertising's like with Zuckerberg. They know, for better or for worse, what they're kind of jumping into if they decide to pivot there. But I think you're also going to see a lot more advertising put in LinkedIn, on Instagram. People are looking for the brand safe spots, and that's where they're more likely to put money. And just like, you're just providing variables that don't need to be there, and brand safety is going to be on the top on a lot of leaders' minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly when it's I heard a thing once saying, the cheapest emotion to sell is outrage. So to your
It
point
is.
about saying something incendiary. So yeah. So moving back to the
If you
sorry.
look on Twitter and you look at the people who are in the advertising program to like get a share of it, and you look at the people who make the most money, most of them are firebrands. Most of them are saying things that literally piss like a whole subsection of the internet off. And so when they talk about like that outrage, you've monetized outrage, and then you don't know why people are choosing to spend their money elsewhere. It's not good. And then the way Elon reacted to Bob Iger, which is a very public CEO to call out, and he recently even called for him to be fired. it's just, there are consequences.
Yeah. Let's move away from the potentially volatile subject of
Yes.
X in that case. Then,
Yes.
if we're looking at Threads, LinkedIn, Facebook, that sort of thing, how much does how much would you say your content varies for the platform, or does it not necessarily so much?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. Like, what do you want the content to do? So, for example, even on LinkedIn, you're seeing more memes and more entertainment content because no matter where you are, hopefully you want something to make your day a little bit brighter. So, for example, I woke up this morning and saw a TikTok about a service dog meeting one of the animal mascot things at Disney World. And like, whether that was what I intended to see when I opened the app, it's just warm and fuzzy. And so here I am talking about it hours later. If it's something that's going to entertain and it fits within that sub-targeted audience, then that seems to be that seems to be the safest content to like distribute across. And like I said, we're even seeing that on LinkedIn where you're seeing more meme accounts. And it doesn't always work, but depending on your brand, if that aligns, like if you're a brand that is very like upper crust and like tie is all the way knotted at the top, then memes are going to be very weird. And you're going to wonder, like, did your account get hacked? But if you're more of a friendly B2B, more casual, more approachable, then having meme content makes a bit more sense. I think the thing is that you need to have your content pillars and figure out what that's going to work for you. Because memes are great, but memes should not be the entire content strategy. That almost makes your social team look like a joke. Because if that's the only thing you're going to rely on, then where's the real strategy? How is that driving business? How is that making people want to work with you? And especially if you're a B2B brand, if everything you say is a joke, then that doesn't really endear me to want to work with you and then have a serious business relationship, you know? So you need to really kind of find your mix. So what's the mix between entertainment and memes? And here's a tutorial of how to use our product or service, or here's something that would help you, or here's some updates that would make your job easier, whatever that looks like. So between like educate, inspire, entertain, what's your content mix and where are you distributing those? And then just doing a lot of experimenting, because the A/B testing that you did 3 or 4 years ago is great, but that doesn't mean that that content would act and perform the exact same way if you did it tomorrow. So just constantly experimenting and constantly being like, all right, well, that worked a couple years ago. It literally just dropped out of the sky today. No one liked it. Noted.
Yeah.
And constantly adapt.
Well, particularly, in the realm of social media, things can change from day to day. Something
Yeah.
that went out yesterday is going to be potentially out of date, 24 hours,
Yeah.
sometimes less later. Do you know what I mean? So,
No, absolutely.
so then, are there any, just sticking with LinkedIn for the minute,
Yeah.
are there any sort of secret unlocks, do you think, any key things that people need to include on their profile to completely optimize their profile at all?
I think you need to be very clear about what you can bring to the table. So what do you want to be known for? A lot of people right now, because the economy is not the greatest and a lot of people have been laid off, they're working on their personal brands on LinkedIn, which is what they should be doing, in my opinion. But just having your title is not indicative of who you are. Because you could be a director, but not doing director level work. You could be a manager and doing director level work. No one knows unless you tell them. So really think about like, what are the 3 to 5 things that you want to be known for, that you bring to the table, the skill set that you have, what do you do, and have that be a part of your profile description when it comes to your title, because just saying who you are and where you went, where you work is not enough. You usually can only really kind of rely on that if it's a really big name brand. And so like your clout comes from just being able to get in the door. A lot of people don't have that. So you have to really make that storytelling work for you. The other thing is they need to be in creator mode. So if you your standard profile is not going to be in creator mode, and it's going to cut you off at, like, when you look at it, it'll say like 500 plus connections, and that's it. If you make it creator mode, you don't have to pay anything, but it's going to make it easier for people to follow you, not just connect. And then that's going to be how you grow your personal brand. People can see how many followers you have. It's going to give you hashtags that you can associate with your profile so people know, oh, okay, Christina's going to talk about social listening. She's going to talk about customer experience. Great. So people are now more and more likely to follow you. I like these hashtags. I talk about this, or this is important to my job, so I'm going to follow this person. The other thing too is they have these collaborative articles, which is if you search like LinkedIn Pulse topics, it'll show up if you're in creator mode. And they're basically just AI questions that you are then able to put in your information. And they're pushing this a lot because it's a content driver for them. But in doing so, that's going to get your name shown to people who would have never found you otherwise to help grow your account. And then if you get enough engagement on any of your answers, you then get like a top community voices badge that then is marked on your profile. So it's like, okay, well, this person, I wouldn't say like this person's an expert, but I would take it as this person is engaged. They're doing more than the average bear here.
Yeah.
And so it's a really great way to differentiate yourself and grow your personal brand that way. But it's really all about fostering. And then I don't see the need for hashtags in post. I know that we all went through that whole like year and a half of everyone on LinkedIn using hashtags, but when everyone uses a hashtag, it kind of loses its power, in my opinion. And so I would go back to just writing your piece, but tagging people in copy based off of like them being a part of it, like thanking them or so-and-so was a part of this or whatever, but making it more conversational. Otherwise it looks like a recipe.
So while hashtags might not necessarily be all that useful on LinkedIn, does that follow for the rest of social media platforms, or do they still hold some traction on things like Threads or Instagram, something like that at all?
Threads, they probably do now that you can do keyword searches. So you could actually search for specific keyword and hashtags to be able to look for that. So I'd say that that's still good there. Instagram, yes, but it needs to not look like keyword stuffing. So I think the majority of it is, I think really good keyword usage is if you know there's a lot of content or it's trending and you want to be a part of that conversation. I think hashtags are still very viable. We saw this last year with the video game awards. They had like everyone that was at the video game awards or was commenting on it. They had like the little award hash flag. So like you press the like and it turns into like the shape of the trophy. And so those kind of conversations where everyone's talking about something at the same time, hashtags are incredibly important there because it jumbles you into that overall conversation. So you're going to get more likes, you're going to get more engagement, you're going to get more people to find you. But when it's just like hashtag this, hashtag that, that's not how people talk. And so err on the side of like, how do people actually speak? And then if you need to tactically be a part of conversations, then using hashtags. Instagram, same thing. Like I actually really like, this might get me in hot water, but for a while it was highly recommended to do like use all 30, like just do a whole comment that's hashtags. Now it's like 3 to 8. And I actually really like that because it means that when I look at your captions, it's not this like zoo of hashtags. It actually, you're more likely to actually go into the captions and write something that's thoughtful or explain yourself or whatever that looks like. And so they still very much have a purpose, but we all know what hashtags are, like we as consumers and as marketers, we all know what they are. We all know what they do. And the consumers are catching up. They see what's happening. They're like, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly why I'm seeing this. And so you have to be prepared to like, what's the workaround for that? Or how can I make the content so good that they know that it's a hashtag campaign and they still want to be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any sort of going into this new year as we are there any new metrics or indicators? Is there anything new that we should be measuring this year that perhaps we weren't necessarily concentrating so much on last year at all?
I think what's really interesting, it's not so much like focusing on new KPIs, but focusing more on diving into the KPIs we currently have using AI. So
That was going to be my next question. So I'm glad that you managed to dovetail, collect the two. So yeah, continue. Sorry,
yeah,
carry on.
I think AI is the unlock for really tapping into deeper insights. And so you have these like full on social listening reports, you have all of these things. There's tons of tools that will mark sentiment, but like you look in there and like actually 90% of it's neutral. And it's not that it's neutral, it's that the tool can't tell. I think AI is going to transform how we look at brand sentiment because it's actually going to be able to pick up more nuance than just a regular tool that's looking for specific words like hate or love. Like before, those tools are not really good at picking up on sarcasm. So if you're being a bit cheeky in your comments, the tools in the past probably would be like neutral or they'd get it wrong because they would read it as like they're doing it like straight faced. And so I think AI is going to absolutely transform that. I also think that AI is going to transform how we look at accessibility. Last year, there was a demo of Gemini. And in the video, you see this person like sliding what looks like a post it note deck in front of the camera. They see that and then they start drawing. And in real time, they're telling you what they're drawing. That is a game changer for alt text. That's a game changer for social media accessibility. So I think that the excuses of, well, we're not as accessible as we could be. I think one of the KPIs you can add is how much of our content is truly accessible to people. And then how can we dive deeper into like brand sentiment by using AI as a synthesizer for is this neutral or is this person being sarcastic or are there like if I pull in into this whole report, can you synthesize the main findings? What are the recommendations based off of what you see? Is there a pattern in negative comments versus positive comments versus neutral? I think that's going to be a huge game changer. I think AI is going to be the social media assistant for 2024.
Yeah, 100%. If last year was the conversation was the mass implication of AI, then this year is definitely going to be following that route, continuing that sort of natural progression for it, which is an interesting phrase actually when you're talking about sort of artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural progression. It's a very strange phrase, but here we are.
Well, I think it came out on the scene. We've all been reading our sci-fi books and watching our movies, so we know the implications. Like I've watched Terminator. I understand where this is going. But what you see too is you have this understanding that Pandora's box is open, so we need to adapt. And so as use cases are showing up, you're going through this like overarching dread of where is this all headed in the long run, but individually but I still have to implement it into my work in order to survive. So as we're seeing those use cases, we then have like an implementation cycle and then an optimization cycle as we're basically training it to be us. And in order for it to do a good job, it has to become us, which is
more human than human.
Yeah. It's wild, but there is very much this parallel to when computers came out and how the people who actively rejected it and were the most fearful of being replaced by it were replaced by it. Meanwhile, the people who adapted, we have new careers, we have new work that did not exist before computers. We have new capabilities and new use cases. And so it's one of those things that you have to understand all of the negative implications while also adapting and utilizing it at the exact same time. So it's very interesting.
100%. Yeah. Christina, it occurs to me that something you've mentioned a couple of times just in this conversation, you've mentioned social listening. Do you mind just explaining very quickly to our audience what the idea of social listening is and how could their B2B business implement it?
Yeah, so what most people think of as social listening is actually social monitoring, which is you have your social accounts and you're waiting for people to tag you or mention you, and then you take on that stuff and you fix it. Think of social monitoring as more of like a customer success, customer service role where people are reacting to you, you're responding accordingly. Social listening is a lot more proactive. So we're not only looking for the people who are mentioning us and talking about us, but we're looking at the general subset of our personas. What are they talking about even when they aren't talking about us? What hobbies, what things do they pay attention to? What's important to them? When they talk about our area, if we're a small business, are there conversations being had about our local area that would implicate whether or not they have a signal towards buying us or buying from a competitor. Are they talking about a competitor? Are they talking about our industry as a whole? And it's a lot of really great research where you essentially have like a bird's eye view of what people are talking about, how they talk, without putting them in a room and offering them a gift card. Like you don't have the biases that you would deal with if you were running like a focus group where that person's coming in, they're like, sure, you can have an hour if you give me like a $50 gift card and lunch. But that doesn't mean that they're going to talk to you the way that they would talk to you if you weren't in the room. And so having that information is incredible audience intelligence. And you can learn more about them. You can see what's important to them, what they're facing. Maybe like a really great example is use cases for partnerships. So you could find that a whole subsection of your target audience loves a specific brand. Maybe that's a brand that you should be partnering with. Maybe you do a collaboration with them because maybe they've heard of you, but they don't know much about you or they don't really care either way. But you do a partnership with this specific brand and there's going to be this like cohesive blend of like, well, if they're working with them, they must be good. And if I'm a fan of one, then I'll probably be a fan of the other. Really great use case for this is last year, Lego and Fortnite did a game. So there's like a whole Lego level for Fortnite. And it makes so much sense. And it really breathes fresh life into Fortnite. But there's also a lot of kids who've been playing with Lego who are probably into that beginning gamer phase who are like, well, I love Lego, but now I should probably play Fortnite because they're working together. And so, but you don't know. It's all based on assumptions if you don't have that information. But I'm a huge fan of social listening. I think it's underutilized across segments. It's absolutely priceless.
100%. And I suppose the just to carry on with your sort of Lego Fortnite example, I suppose that was you can see that as a direct sort of competition to Minecraft, I suppose, because that is effectively first game. It's Lego
Absolutely
in a video game, wasn't it? So no, that makes complete sense. Thank you very much, Christina. I'm going to start to wrap up our conversation. I'm afraid, Christina, we are running out of time once again. It's gone like that, hasn't it? And by the way, you can check out mine and Christina's previous conversations at leadforensics.com/webinars or leadforensics.com/podcasts. There's several conversations up there for you to go and enjoy. As ever, this webinar is obviously brought to you by Lead Forensics, which is software which identifies anonymous visitors to your B2B website, showing you their customer journey, what links they've clicked on, pages they've clicked through, and all in real time. If you'd like to book an obligation-free trial with us or set a demo, just let me know by clicking on the poll, which is on screen now. I will leave that up as we come to the end of our conversation here. There's also another link to our webinar feedback survey form, and I would love to hear what you thought of this week's webinar. So now that we've got the admin out of the way, Christine, I'm going to come back to you for one final question. If there was one thing to take away for everybody watching this to get right about their social media strategy going into this new year, what is that one key bit of advice that you would give to them?
Know your brand and don't follow trends just to follow trends. It has to make sense for your brand. That's where I see a lot of brands trip up is they want to be the cool kid and it fails.
It's a shame that, hopefully I wish there were a day we could see a Lead Forensics and HubSpot game coming out as well in the same way.
That'd be awesome.
Fortnite.
I'd love that. I'd love that.
But Christina, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us again today. Do remember to keep an eye on Lead Forensics socials for news of our upcoming webinars, and I'm sure we will see you again very, very soon. Christina, thank you so much for joining me again.
It was a pleasure.